Hello, everyone. Welcome to Dungeon Master Storytime, Episode 8 Heroes. I am Crusader Jackaran, your humble host, and my co host here today is the Benefactor.
As
And,
always.
and unfortunately, Lady Potato, she has some prior obligations, so she won't be with us today. So, today we are going to talk about heroes. Um, and I'm going to bring up something here, but just real quick, uh, Benefactor, what is your take on the hero's journey?
Now the question is: are we talking about the writing tool, the hero's journey, or are we
Correct.
just okay? We're talking about the writing tool, the hero's journey. I like it. It's bound to be very. What's the very good word for it? Potent. I'm gonna go with that. It's just very well known, and has been very successful in all around general storytelling, where like even subversions of it, not the reverse subversions, but example of this was a background DVD extra for Rick and Morty, where the creators talk about how they use the hero's journey, but it's a bit subversive with how it works with them in their story with Rick Sanchez in them. I personally find there's nothing wrong with it. uh, I like it when I read it. I can tell when it's happening when I read it. Once you get to know what it is, it's pretty obvious. I find it is a very, very
How's it
good
going,
writing.
Mirage?
I find it to be a very great writing tool to use, especially if you're a beginner, and it helps break down how you should go about writing, especially like your first story.
Okay. All right. Um, I was a fan of it. I always thought it's great. I think it's good just as you said, a writing tool. I think it's great as an idea for how to arc your hero, how to arc your characters, not necessarily just your heroes, because the hero's journey, while the direct in your face of it is the hero part, I also look at it as, okay, well, if that's the hero's role, where does everyone else fall in line with this role or with this arc? And I had just recently heard that one of the writers that I absolutely adore, Chuck Dixon, had said something to the effect of the hero's journey is overdone and not creative. And I'm kind of saddens me, but it also like it makes sense to me because Chuck Dixon is an amazing writer in my opinion, and his way of doing things, in my opinion, is unorthodox. You know, he creates new ways to do things, or in my opinion, he does. So for me to see him be like, yeah, I don't use that, or people should move away from using that because it's a crutch. I think that's what he said. It's something to the effect of it's a crutch. So I was like, okay, I sort of agree with him, but at the same time, I'm over here looking at it that if you don't know what you're doing, if you need the training wheels, here's a training wheel. Like this is a great training wheel. It's a great guideline. It's a great thing to just arc your character or possibly as a dungeon master use to help arc someone else's character that doesn't know how to uh, how to guide their character. They don't know where they're taking their character at all. So that is something that I wanted your take on.
Well, and this goes back into something I've said in other earlier podcasts, where I mentioned why I personally, for me with D&D, personally, I like the three character arc journey, which in a sense you still can, and some people still do use the hero's journey as a starting template, but this is another way you can go about it. But I find the hero's journey for a lot of people is a lot easier, which is even mentioned in the book I was reading on how generally you'll go through the hero journey, but starting plot line, but as you're going along, especially in a long running series with many twists and turns, you're no longer going to get like that call to adventure. You know what I mean? So you're in a long running thing. You're using that just to start, but you're never really hitting that exact return. Now you're going into, like I said, the three character. How is going on that adventure, going through the various steps, changing that character? Is it going to be for positive? Is it going to be for negative, or is it going to be neutral? Which sometimes, in a very bad way, is like the end of the hero journey. Sometimes you return the same, sometimes you return a little bit different. But for me, that's one of the things why I say, like, when I write, I prefer doing it that way for a D&D game, because it feels much more natural for your player characters than it does the full hero's journey for a way it's much more useful for like a book story and movie writing.
Yeah. As Niraj says, oftentimes the hero is more easily defined by a much more charismatic antagonist. And yeah, that can be true, definitely so, with player characters. I know people like to look at in terms of movies and stories and things like that, but I'm looking at it from a villain standpoint in writing Dungeons and Dragons, where I have players that don't do anything. They don't react. They don't get up out of their seat. And so that's where, having a compelling villain who's charismatic or energetic or engaging, like the Benefactor here, who is able to coax the hero into action, provoke them into doing something.
Sorry, I clear my throat there. Well, listen, this is a little bit where we also differentiate and divide, because that's how you generally do your stories for that way, and so forth. Which, again, for me, the way I like get my players to move generally too is not just with the villain part we discussed before, things that are personal to them. So for me, I generally, when using it, is why I don't particularly like doing the hero thing. It's something that me and you discussing probably before. But generally, I like to do the adventure thing. You guys are going out and about. If you run into the antagonist that will push you guys forward, usually it's for a personal reason, so that you, I hopefully don't end up with a do nothing person, because this now is, even if it's not the antagonist driving themselves, something itself is driving them to do something that they can't just sit around and be like, well, I don't have anything to do. Well, like, you have some personal to do. Go do that. This is your story. You need to go and do whatever it is you're setting out to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, that is a difference in our style, but I see what you're saying, where it's you take. I want to say your approach, if I were to articulate it, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. No one take this the wrong way. Your approach is very much like the Pokemon adventure, where it's like you wake up and you already know what your goal is. You have your objective and what you're seeking to go out into the world and do, like become a Pokemon master or become a gym leader or just collect a bunch of Pokemon. That's the vibe I get from playing in your games. It's like, your character wakes up and you already know what direction you're going. And so you can deviate and you can go all over the place. And the player may also not know what the character's agenda is, but that's the gist of how that's how I read your games. If that seems correct, if you think that's correct, or if you
Uh,
think players read that way.
I'm fine with that. What I mean, it's a decent enough analogy, especially you consider, like, Team Rocket or any of the villains show up. It's like, now it's on you guys. You guys want to do this? Maybe they do something that doesn't impede your way, and now you're getting involved. So I'm fine with that analogy, especially for other people that's watching. It makes it a lot easier for you to understand. So I'm not really
Okay.
gonna argue against it.
All right. All right. Okay. So I think we both know your answer on this bit, but let me go with do you think every story has to have a hero or should have a hero?
No, but again, this is going on how we are defining hero. Are we doing more of like the hero here, or are we doing protagonist? Eventually, this goes back into like the villain antagonist divide. So, like, we going hero here, we going protagonist. Every story should have a protagonist or a group of protagonists, but do they necessarily have to be heroes and heroes? No. And then we're going. Then my next point is: are we talking about stories? Are we talking about like the Dungeons and Dragons side of it, like the tabletop RPG side of it? So for me, my question for you is breaking it down into those two. if we're going into a regular story, you know, I find that is nothing wrong. It makes it easy, especially again, this is going for more on just the pure story side for the person writing it. It's much easier to have a story with quote heroes because you're out there to make them, beat the villains, save the day, or do quick quote unquote the impossible and be that person in the story that everyone goes thank you to. And this is just a blanket statement of thank you to. Great for D&D, I heavily disagree with that ideology. Something I hate with 5e, especially general now with it being very heroic adventure style instead of like a much more down adventure, a lot of heroism. I think every story should have protagonists, but you can't you can't do anything without a protagonist and an antagonist realistically. So you can have anthology series, but again, even in those, you have someone during this mini short thing that is a protagonist that you're looking through the variable eyes of. So as I said, that's a hard, not a hard question, but a split point question for me based on like every story or you know D&D game.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think heroes are, or every story should have a hero. And when I mean hero, I'm going to blanket that statement, because there's a plethora of types of heroes that there are. So I'm going to shotgun blast it and just say, does a story require every story require a hero? And I'm going to tell the new DMs out there, no, they don't require a hero. You don't need to have them. Your players can choose to be a bunch of pirates, and you guys can run around uh, terrorizing the high seas if that's what you want the campaign to be. If that's what you want to do with your role play and your story, is that these are just a bunch of pirates out here doing their shenanigans. Uh, and so that actually snowballs into my next point, which you were just saying how 5e gears more towards like heroism. And I had posted a meme the other day in my D&D Discord, in fact, comparing the various versions of Dungeons and Dragons, and it compared second edition. Well, let me see if I can bring this up. This is a great meme. It's a good meme. I know not everyone may appreciate or agree with it, but let's do. Yeah, there it is.
The James Bond one in the Austin Powers. Yeah, I saw that. mm, you know, let's say it's just been a long standing problem with me and in just a lot of their adventures tellings and story writing and just people in general. I don't know if it's just Favi alone. Is it just the people that do videos and actually show their games and whatnot? That has a large influence on this. Again, we go back to like Matt Mercer and like Vox Machina and things like that. Various other people that do YouTube videos that kind of have their players be heroes, and going like this heroic journey to stop this evil or something like that. So it's just a long wide variety. Right. I felt it was a little less so in the previous days, but that's just me. This also goes into the fact that how strong 5e characters can be very early on, where they're pretty much godlike and unstoppable. But what do you think here? Is my question to you. Do you think I'm wrong? Do you think it's decently accurate in your own self? 'Cause like I say, I know you like to write a lot of stories generally like that for your D&D games. You have a story that you want to tell with us, your players being those people that go out there and stop the villain, the big bad, and save people and save the day and whatnot. So I know you're a big fellow of that, especially for your DC origins that and stuff like that in comic books. So I'm just curious on your take of it. I think. Oh, I didn't realize it didn't make sound. He has disconnected. Apologies, audience. We will have a little difficulties here. Okay. Yeah, sorry, we're having technical difficulties. You good there? I did all that
Okay, I'm
talking.
back.
Didn't even
Sorry about
realize you dropped. Yes, but I didn't even realize you
I
dropped. They need
yeah,
to make a sound for like happening.
yeah, I'm yelling expletives at my computer because of how mad I am right now that it just fucking disconnected me like that. Because I was like, I went on my phone and my phone has internet connection, so I'm like, well, what the hell? What the hell? So, okay, all right.
It's like, oh, that's not my saying. It's just been just sink to the void. This is great.
Sorry, buddy. Well, before I was so rudely interrupted, what I was gonna say about this is this kind of reminds me of what classic Dungeons and Dragons was. And if you've seen, I know you have. I'm pretty sure you have. If you've seen Conan the Barbarian, all right, they don't really articulate or paint Conan and his allies as heroes. They're sort of just rogues who are out stealing stuff, and their quest happens to lead them into doing a arguably good thing by stopping a cult of slavers, basically.
Which, stuff like that. I'm fine. Yeah, that's perfect. And that leads it up to, in terms of play, that leaves up to them if it's something important to them, which leads them to deal with this. Inadvertently, it does a good thing. But to me, that doesn't make the players heroes. They just did something that inadvertently had
Correct.
a rather good outcome for some people, maybe not everyone, but but they got what they wanted out of it. They achieved their goals out of it, and or one step closer to their main goal. But yes, old school was considerably like that. You're just going around to gain fortune either because you're poor, you're maybe the third son of a noble and you've been disowned and you're trying to get yourself back in society. Usually it's a reason why you're out adventuring, risking your life to make fame and fortune. You know what I mean? You didn't really have a lot of these high looting, background starts where you can start as a noble. You start as not, you're just some poor person who got some skills and some basic equipment and you're risking your life to make money.
Yeah. Let's see. We got Niraj. Kind of hilarious the streamer DCs with all of us still around. Yep. Yep. That's how it goes. That's the streamer's life. Uh, so yeah, that was something that I like Conan the Barbarian as a great example. When I'd first seen it, I was just like, this is Dungeons and Dragons. This is Dungeons and Dragons manifested into a movie. And what's funny is the Dungeons and Dragons movies have never come close to Conan the Barbarian's level of accuracy for Dungeons and Dragons. You know,
Well, I guess you could say it's the problem where the whole, hero's journey becomes a big issue because it is a standard thing used in a lot of media and movies. So generally, a lot of their movies and stuff end up following that kind of doctrine, which leads it to be a bit of a problem. Where the movie's kind of like, this doesn't really feel like a Dungeons and Dragons adventure.
yeah, because you can't really apply Dungeons and Dragons to the Dungeons and Dragons template or theme to something like the hero's journey. I mean, you probably could, but if you're trying to be more authentic Dungeons and Dragons, to really capture it, you got to have the tone and the mood of it just right, where it feels like a believable medieval fantasy, which is why Lord of the Rings is also another great example of that. Lord of the Rings, it's encompassing, it's enveloping. You feel like this is a world that the rules are consistent, the behaviors of people are consistent, the way things are consistent. The magic system and the archetypes of character, or professions. Where if you're following the hero's journey, personally, I like Luke Skywalker as my example. But if you're following the hero's journey, Han Solo doesn't really matter. Princess Leia doesn't really matter. It's all about Luke. It's about his heroism. It's about his journey and how he overcomes the bad guy. And, well, when you put that into a Dungeons and Dragons, it's like, okay, who are you going to focus on? Are you going to make the druid the hero? Are you going to focus the paladin as the hero? Are you going to make the necromancer the hero? And it doesn't really work, from an audience perspective. It doesn't really work when you're trying to set it up in this way. It's sort of like the Hollywood X-Men movies. I would say that's another good example of them trying to put like a hero's journey into an X-Men. And if you know anything about the X-Men, which I know you do, the X-Men, part of their whole shtick is that everyone is unique and everyone brings something to the table. So it's not like, oh, Cyclops, you're not important. Beastman, Beast, you're not important. So it's like, no, everyone has their role. It's X-Men is probably a good example for like a modern day Dungeons and Dragons party, because you have your equivalent to a warlock, you have your equivalent to a rogue, equivalent to a barbarian or paladin, a fighter. Everyone has their different specializations that convert, not exactly perfect, but almost perfectly into a Dungeons and Dragons party template or class system.
Yeah, that's also how I was probably with doing ensemble stories, like pure. A lot of people didn't think Guardians of the Galaxy was going to work here first, but I don't understand. I never understood how it was just like that. The heavy focus on Wolverine and technically Rogue in the first one, and Wolverine and Jean in the third one, where they even killed off Cyclops. It's just like you don't really get a large feel for what it's supposed to be an ensemble. Like the protagonist of this story is supposed to be the entire X-Men. The viewpoint should be as the entire X-Men. And you're right. I think that would have been a good example of, X-Men is a good example of what makes a good D&D party. Or Guardians of the Galaxy. Again, Guardians of the Galaxy is great. You never felt, especially during the first one. The second one, a little bit more, as it was very much more focused on Quill with his father and backstory. But with the first one, you really did get a feel like, you're following everyone, you're seeing what everyone's doing at all times, and that is not just the one person. You really get to see this ensemble of people as a party of completely different backgrounds, just barely any relation to each other. You get you literally get that the role character from Quill. You get the two friends in real that make two characters together with Groot and Rocket, so they came together. Then you get the barbarian kind of guy from Drax, and then you get Gamora, who is another like rogue like assassin type, but a little different from Quill, who's more the rogue thief type. But you get this really large ensemble of different people with different backstories and stuff coming together like a regular D&D party, who end up going out and technically doing the wrong and saving the day, but more of not because they really want to, which is a big thing in the thing. It's not like we really want to save the day, but we kind of stuck have to save the day. You know what I mean? And it's great. I like that. That to me works.
Yeah. Here's Niraj. Tough sell. D&D ideally falls somewhere between the hero's plot and Dragon Age, where the decisions all suck and you're trying to make the best of a bad situation. And he says, ensemble cast, I think they call that in film and television. Yes. Well, I haven't played Dragon Age, but I have played KOTOR 1 and 2, and I've played Mass Effect 1 to 3. And I empathize with the decision-making process in those games where you're trying to be a hero and their definition of hero isn't your definition of hero or the player's idea of hero. You have anything you want to add to that, Benefactor?
No, I think with my explanation going on with the ensemble cast and pretty much the whole start of this, plus people heard my whole thing earlier, I'm pretty good on that one.
All right. So, then it brings me to another thought on this topic, which is, let's assume the players want to be heroes. All right. Should quests be harder for them? As a dungeon master, should we make things more difficult if they want to elevate themselves to the status of hero?
Not really. If you especially you have already have a difficulty in mind for your campaign, I don't really see if they want to be those heroes or really make it more difficult. And this goes into something we talked before, which is like because you're gonna have that larger variety of player skill, even in that, where you said it yourself, where it's not super easy to really balance in general things around having the do nothing players or the players that don't really know what they're doing, and then you have the ones that do know or min max themselves to how they want their character to be like, because you have such a large disparity. It's one of those things that is I think if you already have what you want for your quest and your villain, all that stuff for your campaign set at particular difficulty, I think if they want to be those heroes, I don't think you should boost up the difficulty, because no matter what, you're gonna lose them. Like I said, in role play, you're gonna lose people. In exploration, you're gonna lose people if you do that. And in combat, you're gonna lose people. In all three areas of play, there's always that wide variety disparity. And you make things difficult, you're gonna have that sink or swim problem, where you're gonna have either you're gonna have one person swimming and all of them sink, type of thing, and you don't really want that. So now, if it so happens you did it already, and you just left it how you had it, and it so happens, imagine how bad it would be if you made it harder. So yeah.
Well, what if your story is running and you have something like a Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman combo, right? Like it's not just one hero, it's multiple heroes, and they're taking on, say, an organization. They're taking on a cult. You know, um, should that take center stage, or do you see that as you're not really treating them as heroes? They're more so just adventurers, all on the same level. You're not prioritizing, because that's something I picked up on what you were saying. Is like, okay, so does that mean if there's a hero, that means only one person can be the hero? That's something that you were saying or implying, and I want to clarify that. Are you saying that if there's a hero, only one player could be a hero at the table?
No. You misunderstand what I was saying. When I was saying, you're asking if the party wants to be heroes, right? You know what I'm saying? Your example of using the DC Trinity, they're all on equal footing and standard. You know what I'm saying? They're all equally competent and able to help each other in the areas that they lack, but they're still all equally competent. My thing is, what I'm saying is, you don't get that with all D&D parties. And you know what I'm saying? And this goes in
Okay.
different varieties. So you're gonna end up having the sink or swim phenomenon, where all of them are gonna try to be heroes, but if you make it harder, you may end up having a lot of people that sink and end up with one guy or two people out of your larger group that end up looking like the
Well,
heroes.
you're right. I'm going to bring up one of the stories that I have with my Vertigo Cipher game, which I've talked about this, I think, last week and the week before. Um, Johnny being a character in that campaign who was basically Superman. And his objective in that game was to basically just do everything. So he was the healer, he was the tank, he was the damage dealer. And his philosophy of it was, well, okay, I can build my character this way, and I'm reading through the book and I'm seeing what abilities I can grab and snatch to make this work for me, to make it so that my character can be whatever the team needs him to be. And in that game, how Cypher works is you're supposed to work with the DM, and the DM is supposed to guide you through, like, okay, this is logically how you're designing your character. So we both agree this is how your character is going to be. Your character is supposed to be, let's use the example of Superman. So he's Superman. He's not supposed to be out here using magic spells. He's not supposed to be out here casting fire breath or anything like that. That's not something that Superman does. And throughout this game, what he would do is he would begin to expand his character into that realm outside the scope of his character. And that is something that I think it was difficult for me as a DM to manage. It was because it's like, okay, I have a puzzle set up for the rogue, and now here comes the barbarian paladin to solve the puzzle because he happened to pick up a few abilities in the event he needed to do this exact thing, and not realizing that the rogue's character has designed his entire character to do this specific thing. And it just took it. What ended up happening in that case is that Johnny ended up realizing, okay, because I can do all of these things, we're running into situations where I need to shit or get off the pot. I need to decide, am I going to commit fully to tank? Am I going to commit fully to support? Or am I going to commit fully to damage? Because he was realizing with everyone else and with how my boss fights and encounters were going, he was running into situations where they were coming against an enraged timer. They were there were just too many monsters that were coming out, or there was just too much damage and not enough someone could absorb that damage. So he was realizing, okay, well, the other players, their damage is coming up to my level, their survival is coming up to my level. I can start maneuvering my character in a different direction. I can move my character so that it can complement the rest of the team. But I'm looking at it as, again, I'm going to take the Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman analogy, and I'm going to look at that as like, okay, Superman's the paladin, Batman's the rogue, Wonder Woman's the fighter or barbarian, however you want to look at that. And so, yeah, so my point in bringing that up is this is a diverse cast. They each have their own abilities. And you said earlier, it's like, oh, well, they're on the same level of competency. And I'm looking at like, well, from their perspective, they're confident in who they are. And if your players can reach that level of obtainability, they reach that level of confidence in themselves. They're not afraid of like, hey, this is what my character would do. I don't inherently see a problem with that in terms of difficulty or in terms of one overtaking the other.
Well, a couple of points. The story you told, that's more of a little bit different thing. It's more of a player thing. I
It's
was going
always
to
going to come down to a player thing.
Well, yeah, but I mean that the story you told with that, I kind of I want to go on that, but kind of also touch on another thing. Back at the end of what you said there, but you make it harder at the start because they want to be heroes. It makes it harder for them to gain that competency in confidence. You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying.
Where doesn't say that you don't want to. It doesn't. That's what I mean by their own competence, and you may have a sink or swim phenomenon because you can end up making it hard at the start, and they're not really ready. They don't know all the things they can do. They don't have that competency. But say someone like me is there who has that confidence and competency already. I'm now swimming. You know what I'm saying? While they're sinking.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so that's my whole thing. This goes back to what I wanted to that, like, with that you had with that character. You didn't have that issue with me. As to my I did the same thing. I was someone that was here to fill the role, fill any role up as best I can adequately, and do whatever needs to be done if someone can't do it. But I always make sure that, and I even assign people to do it because I know their strengths and weaknesses, and everything. I even assign people to do this. This is your job. You know what I'm saying? Even though I can do it, I'm like, I want you to do it. You know what I'm saying? I always make sure. This is what I mean by that one. Is definitely like a player thing there, where it's like, yeah, you can do everything, but if someone else in your group can do it and that's their thing, and you only made your character do this so that if someone can't, you're then be like, all right, this is where my step in. That's what my big divide is for that one. There was just like, he should have let that person do that, and then if anyone steps up, then it's just like, now it's my time. And that's what I'm saying. That one's a little bit different what I was really talking about, but you now got what I meant through that. But there's again really good advice to get the plays in general. Even you can do everything. There's someone in the party that can do it. Let them have that time to shine and let them go in and do their thing. And that gives them, especially you're already confident, that gives them that confidence, and then they know, okay, this is something that my character can do now in the future. They know this is their thing. You know what I mean? But this again goes down to for stuff like that. The players they play in DM a very high amount of real communication and trust building and everything, you know, and
Yeah.
really, being and understanding what each other can do. Like I said, for me, there's times where it was stuff with magic and I just let Sylvanas do it. I just sat back and was like, go ahead. She took my role. She took the role of doing the magic stuff. And I just was like, okay, I'm just gonna be here, do whatever I can, lead her, help out, give a help, assist her and stuff.
Well, that was also a level of that was both in-game mentoring, but also out-of-game mentoring, because you actually sat down with her out of game to help her go over her spells, help her figure out a combination of attack and what circumstances she should be using her abilities.
Yeah.
Plasma Giga says, I think what the Benefactor is trying to say is some players will play the role of hero better than other players, either with better role play or better decision making. And yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment. And I think that is what you were saying, right, Benefactor?
The gist of it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Some people are really good at the hero role and some people aren't. And you can't really force someone into the hero role if they don't want to be. But I personally take the route of, if someone wants to be a hero, I don't have a problem letting them be a hero. If they want to try and do the hero thing. I lean towards games where, I like to assume my players are heroes. But even with that assumption, I'm not going to change the degree of difficulty on something. Usually the hero's route is more hard just naturally. Trying to convince a drug dealer to give up dealing drugs is a lot harder than incentivizing the drug dealer to keep dealing drugs.
And I get that, but to me that works better in a book or a story than it does work in D&D, because again, you have very different variety of players. Not every player can solve the puzzle. Not every player is, charismatic to say talk the drug dealer out of, doing what he's doing. So you make it harder, you make it much more difficult on them in the places that they're lacking, though they want to do this. So sometimes that kind of hurts their fantasy for what is a fantasy game for them. It hurts their role play. While I do in a lot of respects kind of be like, don't play above your play grade. Don't, if you're not the charismatic type, don't really try to go and make the charismatic character, same way like you're trying to be this very high intelligent or high wisdom kind of person, but you're not really like that in real life. You're kind of hurting yourself, and it's not much help a DM can give you when they're trying to help set you up on that. Like if you're trying to play a high intelligence person, and the dungeon master gives you, say, a riddle or something, just something basic, a riddle, but you're not, able to process, the riddle or the mystery. You're kind of just sitting like, you're not able to really play that fantasy because you're going above what you yourself can really do. And you end up running. I see that a lot, actually. This is a person that I used to play with that was like that.
I'm encountering that with my my Star Wars game, and that's also where I'm hoping when we get to talking about game systems. I know we talked about game systems, but I'm talking about different gaming systems like Cypher, Pathfinder, 5e, etc. When we get around talking about that, there is something that I like about Cypher, which is it's very story driven. It's not quite, I don't want to say, well, I mean, it is theater of the mind. I should just clarify that. It's very theater of the mind driven. And if you yourself aren't very creative, but your character is supposed to be, so your character is supposed to be Batman, but you yourself aren't Batman and you don't know what Batman would think or know, um, you can very easily chalk it up to, can I do an intellect roll? Or can I do a insert ability that you have on your character sheet roll to see if I know something about this? Because, me as a player, I don't know. I'm dumb. Which in my first game, I did that with Cypher. My DM was like, you notice these symbols are kind of weird. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't, like, the DM isn't really telling me much of anything with that description. So I have a hint out of game what he's trying to say, but I'm just gonna have my character roll, and maybe the DM will just tell me. And yeah, sure enough, when I succeeded, the DM would just tell me, "Oh yeah, you could tell this is like a menu for food." It's like, "Oh, okay, got it."
Yeah, and that definitely works in that scenario a lot better because you can do the same thing in Dungeons and Dragons that with the skill rolls of 4. It is that compared to with how I understand a cipher where you can like use up like XP or something to do it auto success. You're not really that lucky. You're now beholden to what you roll on the dice to really see if you get lucky enough to get told what you're looking to get told.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's like we had in our Thursday game, where you might get a DM who is following the literal definitions of what the abilities and skills are, and they don't waver. They're like, no, insight is for this specific thing, and you can't use it on anything else at all.
yeah, no, I don't fault too much. First time DM, it's something I felt like I personally feel myself I was guilty at on my very very first game, not the one you was in, but the one I very first had done. I felt at times I was a little uh strict on it, trying to get used to how I want to run things and stuff. So I didn't fault too heavily on him. It
Yeah.
was just the other things that was kind of like in the part that we had on top of it, kind of where it went really sour.
Yeah.
But we're kind of deviating a little bit off the hero stuff. So do you think a hero needs a villain or it antagonist enough to have in the story for them? Like, do you think if your player has to have a hero, do you think it has to have a villain? Do you think they have to have an antagonist? What do you want out of your heroes? Is probably what I should say for your player cast. They choose to be heroes. My sense is so.
I would say, no, they don't need a villain. They don't need an antagonist. They need a circumstance. I mean, there's an old movie came out in 94 or 95 called Volcano, right? Let me Google that. With Tommy Lee Jones. And as you might guess out of the name of the movie, Volcano, 1997. The main antagonist of the movie is a volcano. And, there's all kinds of disaster. There's all kinds of terrible things that happen. And people are trying to save each other and rescue each other. And they're working together, coming together to fight this condition, this environmental hazard. And that to me, it's like, well, there's firefighters in it. There's all kinds of heroic behavior that happens throughout the movie that you don't really need to have, a villain twirling their mustache. You don't need a dark sorcerer. You don't need wild animals trying to eat people. It's just, here's a circumstance, an environmental hazard, And I think in today's world, we find that very appealing with, say, like the zombie apocalypse. We find it very appealing with survival games like Ark or Rust, Minecraft, even. You know, the survival against nature is a very appealing antagonist. I'd say like it's an adversity more so, struggling to find food, struggling to maintain hygiene. Things like that are things like that are a lot more interesting, or are capable of making a hero. I was gonna say Aladdin can also be, in my opinion, be considered a hero, as he is willing to work within the underworld of his world or his environment and give food to the poor. Even though he stole it, he is willing to give food to the unfortunate. To me, that can be a heroic deed. One moment here. We have Niraj. It serves as a good guideline to have players not try to play outside their own personality traits. Hard to play what you don't have a natural talent for or understanding of. I see Ryzen. He said 100% to that. And then we have Niraj. That's because those survival situations bring out the best and worst in people. Survival scenarios reveal heroes and villains and defines both. That's a very good point. So, bringing it back to what I was just saying, I don't see it as you don't need a villain for a hero to function, for a hero to be a hero. A villain is great in defining a hero, but they're not necessary. You don't need an antagonist to define your hero. I know a lot of people like to, I'm going to bring up Batman because I love Batman. A lot of people like to say, oh, the Joker defines Batman. His villains define Batman. And it's iconic. It catches the newspaper headlines. It draws your attention in. It's memorable. But if like the Joker is the memorable part of Batman for you, you're not paying attention to Batman. You're not paying attention to what his goals are, what his motivations are. You're like, oh, Batman's the good guy and Joker's the bad guy. And the Joker is doing all these crazy things that because he's just so smart and so genius. You're not looking at it like, well, Batman is jumping through the hoops. Batman is the one who's having to figure out what the Joker's plan is and how to disarm that plan. So.
Okay. Well, you already know, for me, I'm not really a big hero guy. I also agree. You don't really need a villain or a antagonist to have heroes. Again, it already been touched upon. It could be, if you're trying to make people hero and you have a story without that, it could be a natural disaster. Again, we see this in everyday things with firefighters. They always praise as heroes and everything. We had like the incident in New York City with 9/11. You know what I mean? And people like the medic, the firefighters, police, everyone that got involved are considered heroes. So it's, if you were talking about the core, like solving the problem and saving people's lives, heroism, then yes, you don't really need a Muhammad Mustad villain, natural disaster. Not saying that level of natural disaster, by the way. I just realized the context of that was a little off, but
Yeah. I get you.
But well, not just you, just in general when listening, just like, well, the context is low, but in general, you just need a big event to happen where people are going out to do stuff and help people. So I completely understand that. And when it comes to D&D, for me, that just depends on the players themselves. What is it that they want to do themselves? They want to be a hero and they want to be that hero that stops somebody, or they so right that they want to stop this person in their life that will be their antagonist or their villain. I'm perfectly fine with giving them that. It's like, okay, cool. You have that. Those that don't, you'll find other different, as you said, best word for it, adversities that you're going to overcome, and for your character to achieve what it is they're going for. And I think a really good scenario that I did, which you guys got to have that feel of being people that saved the day, and you guys chose to do so, was my Stampede event with the military and the adventurers, which is like, you guys have to protect this town. Are you guys gonna actually go and do it, or you guys gonna just turn around and leave? You guys chose to do it. and in it you save this place from being destroyed, people's lives being upended and rooted. You guys are for yourselves, heroes in that very regard. Now, if you yourself like your hero, that's on you. You may feel that you just did your duty because you are, say, part of the military, or for another player because he was an adventurer, you did it for the reward or your duty. Then that's good. You don't have to feel like you're being forced and coerced to being that hero title. You just did it out of your sense of duty or your sense of desire.
Yeah, and that's something that I look at with when it comes to hero characters and player characters of whether or not they want to be a hero is, are you choosing to take this route? And I'm all for people going like the vigilante route, the Dirty Harry route of like, okay, I see myself as a hero, I see myself doing the good thing, even if society itself may not see it as a good thing, even if society looks at it as like, I'm not so sure this is the best outcome. Again, falls in line with your typical Dungeons and Dragons idea, your Dungeons and Dragons campaign of like, well, they're heroes, but that's probably more singular to the morality of or the thought process of the world or of that local area. You know, they might see it as like, hey, you're toppling the evil governor, and you don't realize that the evil governor was stopping the county next door from coming in and uh, destroying your town or taking over your town. Sort of a Wild West approach is you be the toughest son of a bitch of a sheriff, and that is enough to incentivize cowboys and thugs from coming into your town and running rampant over it, just destroying the place.
Which, if it's like that, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with games in that manner. If we end up doing something and we're viewed as heroes, for me, it's the problem when it feels like that's all we're doing constantly, and that the overarching campaign is us being heroes, and that we're the only ones that can do this. There's no one else out there in the world that can do what we do. That chosen one or chosen group thing. I really can't stand, which is hilarious because this again showed my very inexperienced DM. I kind of had you guys, which I really regret because that wasn't really the intent. And they tried to explain that before we started. It's not really the intent. But I kind of had that happen for you guys to start, just for you guys to meet together. So, I'm very experienced on how to get the group together without having this like real big thing like, yeah, and this is why you got it together. But generally, I really just like the whole chosen one, the chosen group thing, and the whole campaign is us stopping an evil or being here. I said I like much more smaller stuff. I like things on a smaller scale when it really comes down to it. Now, can I do it? Yeah. In general cases, I'm gonna be that Dirty Harry kind of guy. I'm gonna be that guy that I don't really see myself as a hero. I'm just doing what it is that I set myself out to do. I inadvertently helped you guys. I personally feel I could have done better, or I did a bad thing, even though it where I feel like if I'm forced to be a hero, that's kind
Well,
of the
in
the
your
way I
game,
go.
Scion, you had us with this like chosen one type ordeal where we all had this aura, this glow, and we could recognize that in each other. Um, I took that. Maybe not everyone did. Maybe everyone was like, that's just saying, hey, this is a player character, not an NPC character. But to me, um, I look at it like, okay, so he's indicating that we are chosen ones. We are some form of avatar or uh, champion of a deity or a divine being or of elemental plane. And we are tasked with the journey or challenge ahead of us,
Yeah.
and we could choose whether we want to go down the route of evil champion or heroic champion or just a detective doing their 9 to 5.
But this is why I just said like beforehand, because I know what I said. I saw this come in, so I was like, I really hated that part. It was my first time really like hard DMing, and I really regret that. And also I was trying to explain very early on to the players,
Well,
like it's just so I
you
get you guys to
shouldn't
meet each other.
you
It was
shouldn't
really
you shouldn't regret it. Okay? You should accept it, own it, say been there, done that. That's how you have to handle that. You have to just say I've been there, I've done it. All right? Like starting in a tavern. You get a lot of DMs, seasoned, experienced DMs saying, "Oh, you shouldn't start in a tavern. Starting in a tavern so unoriginal." Do it. Just do it. Get it under your belt. Just say, "Hey, I've done that. I've seen how terrible it goes, or I've seen how awesome it goes. I love it, or I hate it." Just do it. Get it under your belt. Get that experience.
I take it as a learning experience, but it's for me it was just like the reason why I hate it and regret it because it's something that I'm personally against is that chosen one thing, and because I just didn't know how to start. The first time DM starting the campaign, I kind of just like this, like everyone understand. It would easily get to meet each other and get to like as a party get together. It's like let's roll with this and do the like explain to them out of character and have it show in character that this is not what the campaign is like focused about. But again, like you said, some people have different expression understanding even when trying to explain it about like how it's what the campaign is about in that manner, even if I explain to the people comprehend differently. So that's your comprehension of it. Some people else may get my meaning of it. Some people may get a complete different meaning from both of us. That's why I say that's why my whole thing was like I eventually everybody did get it, but as why I said I kind of regret it because it's just for me it was against my own style and belief. It was against what I just don't like, and I end up doing it. And that's why I was just kind of like, ugh. But I learned and improved on how I would start, players going forward. But that's not here or there. That's a whole nother topic of discussion
Yeah.
on how to start your players into your game.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, one of the things that I'm gonna throw this out to you because you and I see things so much differently when it comes to how we run our games and what we expect of our players. I like to, as I said before, I like to assume my players are heroes. I start off with that premise, and I then work based around what the players do and how the players unfold that. What is or what are some of your issues with players who take on the persona or the mindset that, and I'm saying this from you're a player, right? And one of your party mates has the mindset of I am a hero. So whatever decision I make is obviously the heroic choice. Have you experienced any problems with that type of mentality? Because I'm sure
Yes.
you've dealt with those type of players.
Yes, definitely in your own game. In Phantom, there's one of great note that it feels like that. And they never ever fulfill that core desire from what it seems like they're trying to do. As a player, it's a little bit frustrating especially because if you don't work with the rest of your group, it at times can become a hindrance. You know what I mean? And this goes back into the person you talked about that did everything. It's pretty much the same thing. It's like you're now taking what could be someone else's thing that they can help you with. They can help you achieve that heroism. But if you try to do it all on your own and you're constantly doing that, you're gonna run into that brick wall that this is not yours. You don't have the ability to do this. This is not what you're doing. You think may be right, but may not be right. And I don't really want to make this a big call out, but one of the perfect examples was when we went to a player character's village, dwarven village, with these 6 children, and that person wanted to do the right thing and help those kids. The way that person went about it was very aggressive, and it was like you don't have the ability to do it. You're being told by the NPCs they don't want your help to do it. And when you keep going on and on, you didn't even really contact the party. He ended up having someone that was luckily there with him. But the people who
Yeah, a
would be
babysitter.
best, yeah, but the people who would be best suited to help these people, you didn't contact. You went above and beyond to try to do this thing, and you end up hurting the party as a whole from helping these kids. It's like, yes, you tried to do the quote heroic thing, but it wasn't you didn't go about the smart way about it. That's the thing. Just because you want to do the heroic thing, or maybe the way you're going about it is very correct, it may not be the smartest way to go about it. So, like, yes, you may have the ability to do it, but the way you're going about it is not the smart, especially if that people don't want your particular brand of help. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then, so yes, I've dealt with that on a constant basis. Where just like if you contact, I don't really say me, but it's in general, you contact one of us, you know, we may be able to help you. We may be to do this as a group, and you can fulfill what you want. You want to help these kids. Your priority should be helping these kids, and this is where I think a big thing is. Your priority should be helping people, not the satisfaction of helping these people. And that's what I feel like at times was the route that person was going. A lot was more of their own satisfaction more than the actual thing of heroism, which was why a lot of times, it would be one of the others of us, going about and getting that, thank you. Like Darvel will get it, some Myas would get it. You know what I'm saying? Those people would get it because they did it not count Thor, he just got lucky. But they did it not for the satisfaction, but for the actual desire of helping. And don't come off like again, this is a player side. It may not be, it's not the character side. The character definitely wants to do it, but from the player, it feels like they're doing it from a satisfactory standpoint. But yeah, I've definitely been in that where I can do no wrong because I'm trying to do the good thing. I'm trying to do the heroic thing. I'm trying to do the helpful thing. And at times, it's not. It may be the heroic thing. You may not necessarily be in the wrong, but you're not doing it the smartest way possible. And this is where I always say with Dungeons and Dragons or any tabletop, any cooperative game, it's get cooperative. You have other people there with you. If you're not working with them, you are doing something against them, even if you're not meaning it intentionally.
Yeah. And something that you were saying there is, which we skirted around this with villains and antagonists with both of those topics, particularly with your character Nicholas, where okay, you have this guy who's here who's like, okay, I am faced with this issue, and I can solve this issue, or at least I think I am, or I think I can, which I'll get to that in just a moment. But you get this guy who makes a decision and a judgment call that hurts his own cause. And so you take someone like Timaeus, who doesn't see himself as a hero. He doesn't see any value in heroism, doesn't see any value in putting labels on things like good versus evil. He looks at it as people are just people. He looks at it as there are laws and rules, and if the law gets broken, then someone needs to come in and rectify this injustice. And then you take someone like this guy who takes on the idea of, oh, I am wholly good, I am wholly justice and lawful and all these things. I'm a hero. And then he does something really horrifically bad. Then you take this guy, you take Timaeus, who looks at him and says, so if this is your idea of wholly good and wholly just, I want nothing to do with it because it is so intrusive and so destructive. It can't be a good thing.
Oh boy, I know exactly what scenario you're talking about too.
Oh, there's a few.
Well, yeah, but
There's a few. But yeah, like that's something that I saw consistently with Timaeus as well as Nicholas. Dimitri was a little bit different. Dimitri, however, had Clank's character as his like, okay, So there's different degrees of good. It's not wholly one form of, hey, we're best friends, I'm going to steal your weapon. There's all right, they're mortals. So they're shades to their personality, and they're shades to good and evil. Or I'm sorry, not good to evil, to their moral compass and how they operate. But I was gonna say that circumstance. This is a cautionary tale for dungeon masters. If you have these type of players, you have to be mindful of what challenges you throw against a player, because the player, they're coming at it most often than not. They're coming at it, especially if they're new, that this is a challenge the DM has put against me. They don't take into account that you, as a dungeon master, you've spent hours prepping this encounter, prepping for this fight to go down or whatever it is that they're about to face. They don't count that in. They count that in as, oh, the dungeon master prepared this just for me, so I have to solve this. And that means something that I can do is meant to solve this issue. They don't take the moment to think, no, this is not a you issue. This is a party issue. This is something for the party to contribute to, especially if you can't think of the first thing to do in how to solve it. If you can't just, here's the solution, maybe it's not just a you problem. Maybe it's something for the party to get involved in. Maybe. Not always the case, but you start with that deductive reasoning. You pause yourself from saying, all right, there's a disease going around the town here. I can cure disease, but the people don't want me to, because they have a taboo against religious people, religious zealots like a paladin or a cleric. Okay, so I have this problem, and I don't have the charisma to really win them over, but I have a party of people who are charismatic. If I go to them, maybe they can sweet talk the people into letting me do the thing. The trick is, I have to get my party on board with this. I have to get my party in cahoots with me so that we can actually let me do the thing that I want to do.
That was a big problem with that in general, because we had somebody working on that, and if that person communicated with us, it would have been solved. That person kind of hindered us in the long term. We had a plan, we had people working on things, we were waiting for things, so we were waiting for the okay to go and do this, and the person went ahead of everyone and did it. Which again, this goes into, it was like, yeah, you're trying to do the heroic thing, sure, but but the way you're going about it, you end up with your conversation hurting the party. You're not really working with everyone here to get the job done. You know what I mean? And that's something I can't stand. Even as that so-called guy that can quote do everything, just like I can't stand. Like again, I just can't stand like not working with the other people that are around you to get objectives done. Like we're in this together. We're things are supposed to be done together. Now, yeah, there's things that are meant for you in your own personal thing and things like that. But even in circumstances like that, you may still need or require someone's aid. You're not alone in this world, literally. It's just really annoying when players do particular things and just again, I may be at fault at something, even unintentional or intentional, where you end up very much hindering the party. You know, it's but if you've been talked to, but in not a character as this, you should really tone this down and you continue doing it. Now it just feels like you just you just play a single player game. You really shouldn't play a group cooperative game. You know, heroes can't do everything alone. That's why if we go by like your whole thing through comics, that's why we have the Justice League. That's the whole thing about them. One hero can't do everything alone. Superman can't do everything alone, even with all his vast array of powers. You know,
Yeah. Niraj says that's one of the core issues with how people view themselves, both in game and IRL. Some folks think of themselves as the hero, good guy, when really they're the problem. Yeah, and I mean that's you're just talking about Superman. He can't do everything. Well, one of the beautiful things that people love about uh, reading Justice League comics is watching these personalities clash with each other and work through their problems with each other. And the common thing is that Batman's method of interrogation is very uh, it's borderline torture. Well, Wonder Woman doesn't have this problem. She throws her lasso around the person and they tell her the truth. Superman uh, is smart enough that when someone's lying to him, he already knows they're lying to him, and he'll play it off like, oh, okay, they just told me the truth. I'm just some bumbling idiot who doesn't know anything. And then the villain's like, hey, sucker. And then Superman just tails them and watches them lead him right to what he wants to know. So, like, these three characters just have different styles. And when you watch their different styles, they end up clashing. Like, oh no, your method, Wonder Woman to Batman, she's like, your method is barbaric. It's destructive. There's no reason for or no need for that level of brutality and cruelty. But it's easy for her to say because she has a lasso that just gets anything she wants out of them. And once the characters understand each other's methodologies and their way they work together, they come together like a well-oiled machine. You get to that Clank, Dimitri, and Galleon combo where it's like these guys, they got the rhythm, they understand how to work together, and they understand what their job is, and they can work in unison on an individual level.
Yeah, 100% agree. That's something that we have in our Starfinder game. Even though we have like three people that kind of do the same thing, which was really hilarious. We all bring a different type of expertise, which is the great thing about Starfinder with themes as well. I think that we bring a different kind of expertise personally within those same skill sets. One is more of a to just explain. We have three people that are good at engineering. We have one that is a cybernetic expert. We have one that is a much more grenade and ballistics expert. And then
Demolition.
yeah, thank you. That's exactly where I don't know why I can think of it. Thank you. Yes, demolition expert. And we have one that's much more on the roboticism level of engineering. And together they work together with help. We have a help action type thing, or we both do the same skill check and can get two different complete information from the same thing because of our detailed expertise. So even though, like I said, we have, like you said, there's three different ways of interrogation. We can all see, each other's faults, but we also see each other's boon in that and understand when situation calls for it, how we use how we can get our information together and get the full picture of something, or we can work on this together and get that underlining understanding of each other's abilities, and we know when one calls for the other for particular situations. You know, and again, that's again goes to the core of cooperation. We understand we are a party, both in and out of character. We understand we are a group, we are a party. We cannot be, you know, Mr. Solo Dolo. For the Starfinder campaign, we're military personnel. We actually ran into, I think, a pretty good example. This is not really a hero example, but a pretty good example that happened was we were chasing down these elder things. That's literally their name, elder things. They're pretty much from Cthulhu monsters that Starfinder has, but they're actually Cthulhu monsters, like from the Cthulhu mythos, elder things. But Starfinder uses them, and they were going to go and pretty much destroy the colony. I was just keep it straight. So in order for us to get there quickly, we had a map, but it was blocked by a gate that we didn't have the key for. There was another way around, but it would take it longer. So one player tried to break it with their weapon because the weapon has like a power bunker or something like that to try to break it. Didn't work. I had a drone that can lockpick or destroy, a certain hardest material. Sadly, material is too hard. All right. So at this point, we're like, okay, and this is me because I'm used to just like your games, but in general with D&D, people constantly trying to waste time rolling and rolling and rolling. It's like, guys, can we just move on? All right. Instead of just sitting here constantly trying to roll to get this done, we can just be going. Another player that said, wait, hold on. They have something they can do where I'm like, okay, cool. We'll give this a chance. If it doesn't work, let's move. I have a personal thing of just sitting here and just constantly rolling or just, it's like, we just go. Where he ended up having demolition stuff, which ended up breaking a lot for us to get there quickly and deal with the problem before it was too late. And that's again goes into, we each had a method to break the lock. But the best method ended up being this person's method. Now we have that in our toolkit of, okay, if we want to do something without wasting demolition charges or damaging the weapon, we know I can do a lot picking with my drone, or it can just slice it off cleanly, no issue. If the thing is weaker than the saw blade. If it's something of a slightly sturdier, we have the guy with his power bunker to see if it breaks off. If not, we have to use an even stronger thing with the power charges. So I just wanted to bring that story in where it's like, but that took us to cooperate with each other and, be like, okay, we each have something to bring to the table and solution. So now in the future, we always talk, communicate what can you do to help with the situation. What is your skill set? We're always looking to each other for that kind of stuff, and that goes to not even just problem puzzles the DM gives, but even the story stuff where we're talking about the current missions we went on, and we're just like, okay, what is the main antagonist get out of this? And then one of the perfect things that happened was I was just talking in a leading direction on the whole elder thing and my suspicion with the previous mystery on with another player character and just talking, we're cooperating. He literally came to the conclusion I was hoping someone would come to and say. So instead of me just outright saying it out loud, you know, it's more of a natural talk and cooperation to get everyone involved. And someone saying, X. And it's just like, exactly, exactly what I'm leading to with me talking to you. And that's something I felt was a very, no offense to you, it's not really your fault, big problem in your game where it came down to just, with your player just not really working with the rest of the party for anything. And Steven thinks to his own benefit, where it's just like, you don't really come to get aid in this. And when you do, it's very random and sporadic, and it's kind of just like, what is this about? And it's not really an explanation. Best example was breaking into the room and asking for an item, and we're just like, the hell? And it's like, we what? And it's just leaving. It was like, we can't help you with this one, but can you explain? It's like, all right, and then just leaving. You don't no real sense of communication or dialogue happens. Or when you do have it, they argue with you, and it's just like, why? Is this not what your character wants to do? And this goes into the heroism thing. You want to be a hero. You want to be this. I'm working with you to be that, but now you're working against yourself. Which you said before, sometimes they make it that work against themselves. Is like, but is this not what you want to be and what you want to do? This is not what you describe to us as your thing. Why? I don't understand why you're like having this big argument with me when I'm giving you the ability to be a hero like you want.
Yeah. And I was gonna say that's something that when in my Star Wars game, when these guys were making their characters, after one or two of their first sessions, I began asking them like, okay, what do you guys see yourselves with the party? Like, what do you guys see portrayed and things like that? And people were their ideas of like who were their best matches, who were their best party mates. I feared they would draw, and so I was like, okay, no, based on the rule book, these would be your best partners. Now, I have the privilege of being the dungeon master and seeing everyone's character sheet to understand, okay, what angle are each of these guys going for with their character. I'm there with them most of the time to create their character. And when these guys are at the table playing with each other, they're reading the personalities of each other. They're not reading the skill sets of each other. They're not reading the competency of each other or what the character's interests are. They're going strictly off of what the player is saying, and the player oftentimes says things that are outside their skills and expertise. As you would know, certain players who like to talk and build themselves up as like, oh yeah, I'm good at this, or I can do something like that, or I would like to do something like that.
And that just goes down to, in general, poor communication. It's great. You got to know each other through personality. There's something that we did run into the Starfinder campaign, where we a bit during introductions. Some people didn't really explain well what they did, or didn't explain at all. Their specialty or skill sets. Which the DM kind of just like, not sigh, but he kind of like laughed a little bit and like, he had that issue before, but on a worse scale. He had told me, so it was funny that it kind of happened again. But I understand that, especially because one of the people is very, very new. And I don't want to misrepresent the DM too much. It's just based on our little talk about it. But there's also that where people sometimes don't also know, and we sort of don't know how to express their skill set without blatantly saying their class, but the class doesn't really explain your skill set. It's like, okay, yeah, you're the wizard, but what kind of wizard are you? And this is where, through your personality and your skill set, which, generally, hopefully, when you're making a character, they align. It's a little weird when you have a character with this personality, but their skill set doesn't match. It gives that like really weird dichotomy. It's like, why are you able? Like, why is this your skill set? But it's like saying, I'm a good guy, but I break in houses. I
Yeah,
did a lot of thieves tools. You know what I'm saying? In that, like, you might have a purpose for it, but at times it's a big dichotomy when you see that. Not the best example, but just trying to be quick with it. Where it's just really weird. But this is where describing your skill sets when talking to people and letting people know, oh yeah, I'm a great mechanic. I like building cars and all this stuff, things like that. I like cars. So the perfect example, this is my character, Tyler, for the Starfinder campaign, where his big thing in outside like roboticism, he has drones. He loves drones, and when explaining his skill set, he's like, my primary thing is sniper, but I have a hobby of drones. I like, robots and I like drones, and he had the drones around him, and a lot of his personality and aspects of his engineering and skill set and computer stuff is around drones and sniping. So like my skill set is, except one of them, which the team had to help me because I had a poor wisdom score,
right.
so I didn't have a good perception. But he has computers, engineering. He has military training, so he has acrobatics and athleticism, stealthing, which is good for a sniper to have. Perception, which again I didn't have a good wisdom. DM helped me with an item to help me kind of cover for that, things like that. His skill sets also show in the personality because his love for drones, his how he takes care of his sniper rifle, you know, having that match. So when he talks, you can get a feel for like why he's like this. You can feel for why he's a mechanic class, but you get a feel for why he has the drones and stuff like that because he why he has these engineering skills, take care of the drones, take care of any mechanical issues as well as weaponries and armor. So that having that and then talking to your fellow players in character, and sharing those small details of your backstory and your character and what they're about really helps in that regard. And that's something with me as Tamias is why I always try to talk to all the other players and get to know what their characters and play, about what he's in play, but talk to their characters and see what they're all about and whatnot. This is how me and Sylvanas' character, Tomias Sylvanas' relationship started, and went forward. This is how Tomias and Dawn relationship was going forward and taking on through their various talks. I got to understand her personality, especially after the whole, first kind of iteration with the whole fire, going around and really talking and getting their personality and really even asking, what is it that you do? And just a plain simple asking of that can just help in the long run so everyone can get a gist of what it is that your character's about, both personality and skill wise. And it makes it easier for everyone to meld and mesh together and understand this is what you can help me with, this is what I can help you with, this is what they can help you with. And another, I know the little rambling going on is with me and one of the player characters, his captain Vari. He was an engineer. I had an idea to use gems and make, in a sense, a lightsaber. And everything, which I talked to you about incorporating into the game with changing the gems
Yeah.
around and insert, and I was like, how I want to put this into the world is work with Invari on making a slot that I can place the gems in my weapon and enchant the weapon this way to make, these particular weapons. And I knew that because he has the engineering and blacksmithing skills to do it. And this is why even when I wanted to make items for Sylvanas like a necklace, he was my first thought because I know this is his skill set, this is in his expertise. Same with him when he wanted elemental bullets. He was like, I know someone that is great at magic, and me and him already work together, and he would know how to imbue stuff. He's done it before. He's me to do this, and he asked me, "Can you do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe a little tricky, but I can definitely give it a shot." Where this other player also had it. None of us knew to like midway through the game that he didn't. He never really like talked. He just came randomly, finally about it. It was just like, oh, I didn't know. If I knew you could do this, I would have went to you for help because that's what our relationship was supposed to be. Didn't really play it out well. Where I ended up taking much more to the other guy. That was hilarious. The elf and the dwarf. But
Yeah.
where it's like if you would have told me this and you communicated and talked to me like we're people, and together, like how I thought we were gonna be like, I would have came to you to help me make this item and everything. You know what I mean? I'm
But
glad you're
you,
telling me now,
yeah,
before we
you,
were
you
on.
didn't take the time to actually speak to your teammates, which um, make of it what you will. Typically, a characteristic of a hero is communication skills, some way of engaging and connecting with your community, your society, your world.
Yeah. So, uh, sorry, I had to drink a little bit, drink of water there.
You're right.
But
So
yeah, no, oh, sorry, go ahead.
so I'm thinking of that scenario, and I'm also thinking of the another scenario where um, one player in my game, he was I have professions in my game, crafting professions. You know this. The audience, you might not know this. And typically, what I'll do is I'll give people a free profession at the start of the game. I'll be like, "Hey, pick a profession you want. You can have it for whatever, either a crafting profession, a gathering profession, or just something to say your character was making a living off of this thing before the campaign. So this is basically how you got your money, etc." And uh, this one player was trying to deter and push away other players from taking any of his skills or abilities in terms of profession. And my attitude of it was, well, I wouldn't do that if someone wants to be an armor smith or they want to be a blacksmith or if they want to be a whatever. Um, let them, okay? Because you're not going to be there all the time. Now, that's going to step on their toes in terms of like, okay, if someone needs a blacksmith, they're not going to go to you or they may not go to you. But all right, that's on you. You need to give them incentive. You need to work with them and engage with them to make them want to go to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I saw that as that was something a player had done, and I was trying to tell them like, hey, don't don't go telling someone not to do something, because something I also did with my crafting system is I made it so there's an incentive for multiple people to go down a crafting route. As you saw with blacksmithing in the End Times campaign, there was armor with blacksmithing alone. There was armor smith, weaponsmith, and I forget what the third one was. It's like pure blacksmith, I think.
Yeah, it was just all rounder.
Yeah, and each of those had a different specialty. They had a different thing that they brought to the table. And so it's like, okay, if you have more than one blacksmith, you might want to coordinate with your blacksmith, hey, what route of blacksmithing are you learning? That way I can go a different route and we can synergize.
Oh, this is why I was gonna say I'm a little bit mixed on, because this is why I like session zeros. Because sometimes nothing wrong with that, especially if you're trying to diversify the team's bond. I usually say I've been guilty of that. One of the people in the chat would know when we were starting the Starfinder campaign. I was like, please don't, bro. I've been like trying to do this for the longest. I really don't want someone else also taking the mechanic drone route. Like I've literally been trying to get this to play this for the longest. Please something else. I didn't care if he was mechanic, just please don't be mechanics wrong. This is why I think session zero and talking out appropriately, works out really well. And that's why I like session zeros a lot as a group thing. Now, if there's a way, if it's a very big way to make it a large enough difference, I think it's fine. But then again, let's say for me, it's also having especially if you have a smaller party, a well diverse set of skills that you don't get stuck with people just no one having the skill, and it's just like, well, doodle dangles. Trying to curse too much, doodle dangles. We don't have anybody that's really great with that.
Right. And that is like me, I'm not big on session zeros personally. I see the value in them, but I'm more willing to work with players and repeat the same thing over and over and over again because I'm a masochist in that way. But yeah, the session zeros are great for having the players sit down and letting them talk to each other as to like, okay, this is what we want to do. The one time I actually did that was, I'd say the one time I did that was with my Cypher game, and I didn't entirely do it. I had some players that didn't even show up to the session zero, but generally all of the players I was able to get them on the same page. I was able to get them to have their initial meeting so that they could all understand where their characters are at. We did a little bit of role playing with it. And from there, the party was introduced.
Again, a little off tangent, but some good thing about Saint Zero sometimes is you end up having two-player characters end up being joined together. Maybe they originally didn't, but then talking, with the characters and talking, like, what? How about we know each other? And then it helped create a better overall party cohesion. Do that together. Maybe through something someone else made. So it's a good thing because maybe they all have a small circumstance of knowing each other. If that's what they want, not all the time. That happens, but that happened with me and another player when we was doing the session zero. It was like, hey, how about you and I be friends with each other? We met, we've been friends, even we haven't met very recently or in a long while. We know each other, and we just so happen to be on this mission together, or we end up being on this ship together. And it's just like it's really great for particular things like that. I find among other things, but like I said, it lets also with people together understand, like everyone, not necessarily understand, but knowing how not to necessarily completely step on someone's toes or have someone kind of like, you're right. It's great if someone else can do something if you're not there, which is why, like, with the whole with us having three people that are good at engineering, that I didn't really have a problem with. I just laughed because it's just like there's like three people with the same skill set. Like, we're kind of like overdoing it. What about the other skill sets? Where it's like a big joke, and where it was a little bit confusing because, like, in Misty, about 77, like in your fair in time, but this is actually built into the game for Starfinder. We have a spaceship and you have jobs and things like that. So it was kind of like, okay, well, we have three people in engineering and we have one engineering thing. The person who one person wanted to pilot, one engineer definitely wanted to pilot. I was like, okay, fine. Another guy wanted to do engineering, which is the thing I wanted to do. Since because I didn't really want to be the head pilot, I wanted that. So the other guy wanted to be head pilot. I just secondary pilot, but I wanted to be an engineer guy. Another guy wanted to engineer. I was like, I took that sacrifice. Be like, fine. Luckily we have another thing I can be useful in, which is with more the computer side, which is the science officer department. So it does work out where we now have, if any emergency, someone can cover for us. But I can cover for pilot, someone can cover for engineer, someone can cover for the computer. So yes, having people with multiple skills, especially depending, works out. I'm not saying against it. That's what again, that's communication. And sometimes some people have to make sacrifices for other people. That also has to be kind of understood by some people. Where it's becoming a bit of a thing. Sometimes take the high ground and just be the guy to make the sacrifice and be like, you know what, we're here together. We are hopefully friends when playing this together and everything. Not in the game, but as actual people.
As
This is
players.
what you want to do. Yeah, sometimes someone has to make that sacrifice and be like, I'm gonna back off. I generally tend to be that guy. I'm not even trying like too long. Like, it's literally, I'm not trying too long, but I generally tend to be. I'm like, you know what? I'll take the back seat. It's not that big of a deal. There's some things I'm very adamant about, which again is like the mechanic things, like really adamant about the drone thing. So then thankfully that player eventually, backed out. DM helped him find something with the mechanic and things, that he might like. So it worked out, but compromise is definitely something that is also that one topic is requirement of hero sacrifice and compromising.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also why I was saying earlier that being a hero, in my mind, has an innate difficulty already put against it. And, as you're saying, it's like you would think someone, if they're taking on the role of hero, they would understand that, okay, there's compromise that's required here. There's negotiations, there's diplomacy that has to take place to work cohesively with your team. And not being aware as a DM, you want to be wary and be mindful of circumstances where the players are going to say, well, I'm the hero, therefore every decision I make is the correct decision because I'm a hero. So I mean that would be my biggest cautionary tale with it. I mean, it's people who do hero work in traditional D&D think being a murder hobo is a part of that heroism, if you will. It's like, well, I slayed the dragon, slayed a bunch of goblins, slayed the evil sorcerer. I'm a hero. And it's like, well, you didn't really save the town. You didn't really save the damsel, or maybe you did save the damsel. But that's still like just saving one damsel doesn't, immediately reach to star power. Maybe if you take the Conan Barbarian route of you saved a princess, maybe I'll give you that.
I think about this goes into, well, I killed the villain, or I killed the bad guy here, as everything is the one guy who's like limping, is like, but he still managed to destroy everything as part of his plan.
Yeah.
Everything is ruined. Everyone else is dead, and that person just drops dead. It's like, ooh, like
I managed to stop the villain, but the entire city is nuked.
Yeah, it's like,
you won't
did
nuke
you
another
really?
city.
At best, yeah, that's the best. That's the best outcome you can look at. It's like, well, he won't manage to nuke another city. So it's like, if you spent less time trying to just kill him and actually, stop him first, at least, you would have saved lives and be viewed as a hero. You kind of just viewed as good job, man. He won't, kill anybody else, but you didn't really stop him. He still achieved his goal or objective. So I get that. This is players being murderable is kind of like, I don't know, innate instinct of a lot of players. Are just like, you put an enemy in front of them and their first logical thought is to kill it. I don't know what to do with that situation. And then it also comes down to, maybe you need information out of this person before you kill them. This is not even like a villain. You're going through the mooks, but it's just like you're just killing every mook. It's like, you don't know if you need information out of these mooks. You can't just kill every single one of them. But they're helping the bad guy, helping the villain hurt people. We have to kill them and stop them. It's just like, but you're not gaining any valuable information to deal with the main problem in the long run. And then there's also times it's going the whole another thing with the murder whole thing. We're just like, and then some people believe, okay, fine, we interrogated the guy. He didn't give us any information. None of them are gonna talk ever again. Let's just kill everybody. I ran into that situation where it's just like they finally captured somebody. That person didn't talk. None of them is gonna talk now. Fuck it, we're gonna kill them. Every single last person here is like, no, it's trial and error. Like, some people, you made this person didn't talk. You don't know what the next person is gonna be like. People are different. Not every enemy is a talk, and some enemies actually have valuable information, some don't. You may have got a guy that is a true mook. It's like, I have no idea. I'm just paid to stop you from being here. I don't even know why I'm here besides money. And then you may get, what people like to call in literature the dragon. That kind of second in command guy who's just like, yeah, I know pretty much everything except maybe like 2 steps of what the boss is doing. You can't just go straight and kill him.
Yeah.
It's trial and error. You have to pick and choose. You can't. And this game goes into the problem of murder whole brain. You kill everyone. What are you learning? How are you effectively stopping him? And this was kind of my point with the Scion tutorial with them, where you guys were like killing all of them, and it hastens the ritual, which is explain. You killing all of them hastens the ritual to teach like your solution can't be massacre all of them. And they even put that point to the test was one of them killed themselves. No, I think 2 of them killed themselves in front of you guys, was to make a point. Like, killing them is not the solution. Some of them don't give a F. They will sit here and kill themselves. And it happens again later to make another point. Where, sometimes the enemy may kill themselves. Or if one person killed themselves, it may be an example to the others to kill themselves. And sometimes you may have to separate them in a very, that good cop bad cop, like the very real life jail scenario where you have them in different cells and different interrogation, where one person may think the other is snitching. And it's again, this also goes out of players, in their own way of thinking. But sometimes it's things like that where there's very nuance to that, and just murder hoboing and thinking this is the right thing to do, or this is going to be the heroic thing to do, is not the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and I was gonna say with that, it's like there's more than one way to skin a cat, and it's also why it's important for your character to have, a personality or some sort of backstory that's tied into who they are, that makes them have the moral compass that they have. So, back to my Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman analogy. All right. Batman's origin, his personality is torture is perfectly fine. Torturing someone now prevents someone later from getting hurt. Wonder Woman's like, no, torture is cruel and uncompassionate. She's a compassionate person, very compassionate. So very empathetic.
And it's like, it depends on who's writing the story. Sometimes Wonder Woman is like very Amazon and brutal. Like, she's like, you know what? I'm done here, and just like starts slicing people's heads off.
See, that's where I'll draw a distinction there. Okay, it depends on who they're up against. Okay, because Wonder Woman understands if she's up against a regular person, man or woman, if they're mortal, okay, she doesn't have to, or she has to treat them differently than if she's up against, say, a Kryptonian or a Amazonian. Right? There's different degrees in which severity that she must administer. All right. But for all intents purposes, if she's working with Batman and Batman's interrogating someone, chances are this is an ordinary person. And her lasso is just all she needs to get what she needs to know.
Word of advice, DMs, never give your players a lasso truth. It's so busted.
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. All right, wait. Well, we have Niraj. Personally, I'm more of an adventurer. My longest standing game experience is with Shadowrun, a game where heroism is sparse.
Yeah, I asked in the chat, are you a heroic player or an adventurer player?
Okay, okay. Yeah, I see that. That's that up here.
So it was great response. So like he gained more favorability points towards me. Good job. Like I said, I'm much more the adventure type. I'm the kind of guy that I personally look at like stories on a smaller scale, where it's about what each player character is in themselves trying to achieve and do. If I'm a merchant and trying around, maybe I'm trying to earn enough money to buy back my family business or something like that. Like very much more smaller scale, not one where I'm just trying to stop some villainous criminal or trying to save people. Just very small time petty stuff.
Yeah, and
Something that's petty personal.
I would say for me, I like both routes. Um, I go with what I focus on the story. So, as you've seen me with Hal, Hal is very, for all intents and purposes, Hal is supposed to be a murder hobo, but I don't play him as one. Uh, I look at it as, what does the story require for me to play? Does it require me to be a hero? Does it require for me to be an adventurer? And that's also how I look at the stories that I write for my campaign is, do I want my players going the route of hero, or do I want them to go the route of adventurer? And more often than not, I don't have an answer for that. I typically think, okay, this is the story idea I'm conceiving, and I'm going to give them the route of whether they want to do the hero, villain, neutral, or BTFO. Narash. For most Shadowrunners, at least early on, the mission tends to be about making the rent. That's a good point. That's not far from general Dungeons and Dragons, which 5e has changed it, but typically the general motivation in Dungeons and Dragons was having money so that you could get a drink at a tavern or a bar or somewhere, so you could do tavern shenanigans.
I mean, you also used to be able to start your own business and have housing and actually have to pay rent, taxes. It was a lot of things actually that Gary Gygax did, where the players are meant to spend their money and forcing them to keep going out to earn money. Business was to help kind of offset that, but it was like a lot of taxes when we went to new towns and stuff. A lot of varying things like that originally in Dungeon Drag. You still kind of see it in their Dungeon Master Guide, but it's not on the same level I feel that it used to be
Yeah, I
on.
would say that's the first time I'm hearing of it, so that's interesting. But two, I was gonna say I don't think that's really, in their interest anymore.
Yeah, no, yeah, no.
Because
This is what I mean by like the drastic change from the much more adventure era to the
yeah,
heroic era is one of those big changes.
yeah, and that's where I would agree with you. I was like, they don't do that because that would make the game interesting. If like, and again, I love heroes. I love the hero aspect of it. Okay, but you don't have to kill all of the other aspects of the game either. It's like I say about video game gold. It's like, oh, my character's carrying 1,000 gold in his pocket. 1,000 gold pieces. Do you have any idea how heavy that would be? Like that's insane. And like no one should be carrying 1,000 gold pieces. It used to be a real big thing when I was growing up with Dungeons and Dragons, was the bag of holding. Like so many people were excited once they got a bag of holding. Like it was like a stepping stone in your travels of becoming an adventurer. Was, hey, my party's got a bag of holding. And that was the other thing. It was my party. It wasn't like, oh, I have the bag of holding. It's no, if we had one bag of holding, it was the party's bag of holding.
Oh, remember, I wanted a damn bag of holding. I had to shoot through hoops to just carry things around. I was like, okay, you
Yep.
know what? Screw it. I got magic. tips off floating disc. What are you doing with this? We're putting stuff on it.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not gonna give me a magic bag holding? Fine, DM. I'll do it myself.
Which is fine. See, that prompted creativity. I'm okay with that.
And frustration. But no, you're completely right. Even to this day, a bit bag holding is very much wanted. It's pretty easy to get, kind of. A lot of DMs I've seen kind of give it already away, or have people start with it just to get rid of that in encumbrance kind of difficulty, and just like screw it. But generally, yeah, it's one of those big things, which leads a bit into companions. You should be able to hire your own mooks. And this is where you could also be, in a sense, hero. You could make a hero organization in the old games if you really wanted to. You hire these like level 1s or level 3 mooks that you pay with your money to just send off and scoot and do things. You could actually start your own Justice League realistically in the old game.
Yes.
That's something I think I kind of would have liked to done in 3.5 and Pathfinder. I kind of did want to start my own organization with one of my player characters, where I had like all the feats for companions and leadership and things like that. But you can always do things like that, which I think we'll get into a bit with the next thing we want to talk about next week's session. But back on the whole thing with the murder hobos and players and being here problem solving, and you brought up something great, creativity. This comes into the issue of not everyone will have a good idea how to solve a problem, how to troubleshoot. This is going to like, okay, you're not getting us a bag of holding. Well, I have the ability to let me carry things. I'm gonna do 10 soft floating disc and just put crap on top of it. You know what I mean? I could think of that. There may not be you might have a player that doesn't think of that as a way to solve the problem of not having a bag of holding. And this goes back into just sometimes people have the idea of that they want to be a hero and just don't know how to go about it. And how do you solve that issue?
Well, if someone doesn't have that instinct or that creativity or imagination, I try to guide them towards the ability and stats that are on their sheet. And I'll try to guide or hint to them after game or before game to consider this. I'll talk to the players and I'll nudge them. I'll poke and prod their brain. My objective throughout the week between sessions is to get their neurons to start firing off, to start entertaining and thinking of different ideas of how this scenario could play out. And I've discovered long ago, I had this recent issue in my Star Wars game where the players are making assumptions. They're making up things and theories as to what's going on in the current encounter that they're in. And they're having all kinds of variables that are fact. And they're trying to connect these facts together. And they're under the pretense that all facts fit together like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they don't understand that one, you might get 1, 2, 4, and 6. And you're never going to find 3. And you won't know what 5 is. Okay. Or you might guess what 5 is. And it might be correct. And so these players are coming at this with these different ideas, and they're making assumptions. They're trying to just cram this story to fit together so that it's a nice, neat little package. And I've learned, as I said before, a long time ago, that if I tell them the answer, it's not fun. They don't want me to tell them the answer. Okay. Despite the fact they can say terrible things about me and completely criticize me as a dungeon master. I don't take that personally. It comes with the territory. You might piss off your players. It's fine. So with all these things, my objective is, okay, I don't want to tell the players they're wrong. I don't want to tell the players they're coming at the problem from the wrong angle. What I want to do is I want to get their brains thinking. I want to get them, because like I said, if I start going in there and start explaining what they did wrong, or how they're incompetent, or how they're stupid, or whatever have you, if I start coming at them at that, it no longer becomes a group collaboration of people trying to figure out what is it that's going on. It becomes players versus DM. And so as a DM, you want to just your core functionality is to just let the players know, here's what you know. Okay? And if you're out of game, one of the advantages of doing it outside of game versus at the table during the game is the players are able to objectively take a step back and read what's happening and get a recap. And then when a player says something that's wrong, another player can correct them because they see that the dungeon master put it out there that this is the matter of fact that you guys discovered. And all the other shit that you guys came up with, completely irrelevant to the thing, all of that is not the fact. Okay, you guys speculating that he had come from this town and that he had 3 horses with him. Okay, that's all speculation. It's completely fabricated, made up by a player. It has nothing to do with the facts that you guys were presented. You guys had theorized there were 3 horses, and then so you guys proceeded with your equation that there are 3 horses, but you had no evidence that there were 3 horses. You guys just added the 3rd horse and just went with it. So, that's something that I've learned long time ago is don't fight the players, especially if you're throwing at them challenges they can't answer, that they're not creative enough to answer, or they're just too close to the thing to decipher it. They're too close. That's the best way I could say it, is they have to take a step back, breathe, and stop smashing their head against it. They need to just breathe and just mull it over a little bit. And my job as a DM is to get them to get those creative juices flowing, get them thinking about it. And sometimes you have to let them go. They're like, I can't think of anything. Okay. And then when it comes time for a decision, they make a decision of what they want to do. If they want to just smash their head against it or use a sledgehammer, that's their prerogative. I've had them do that where they're like, I'm just going to smash it. And then they deal with the consequences of that. I mean, Johnny from my Cypher game, he's done that several times. Gorzak in my Star Wars game, he has done that several times where it's like, I'm going to beat my fist against this locked door because it makes me feel better. And that's what my character would do. Okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's just so hard and so frustrating, especially when either the player complains or whine, or they take the thing as this is why I should never do anything. I only make things worse. It's always just like you, instead of just talking with the group about what happened, you're so focused on either your speculation or your failure that you're missing the bigger picture. And I had something happen to in the side game where the last dungeon where they ended up TPKing in, where they had all these hints that there was something under the dungeon. So they passed this little room, and under the ice, I described, you see something under that ice going under the dungeon, right? As they went further along, they find tentacles popping out from holes and everything, in the dungeon. They had to get through. They had to get through this very narrow area. It was 3 pathways to try to get across the other side, where a lot of tentacles are and were hitting them. Right. So one of the players' plans was to banish the tentacle, like one of the tentacles, right? So they can get through. Now, it failed. It's like trying to banish a toe. You know what I'm saying? It's not happening.
Yeah.
So it agitated the creature, because imagine if somebody tried to banish your toe. It's not going to feel good. You know what I'm saying? So it agitated and ended up shaking the dungeon, where they all had to keep making deck saves, because now the thing that is pretty much under the dungeon is shaking violently. The player, instead of taking that as a point of thing to talk about, more so kind of just whine and like, see, this is why I don't want to do anything, because I always make things worse. It's like you're not taking, when players don't take the right takeaway from a situation. You know what I mean? And it gets really frustrating at times, because you want to tell the players, like, you should really take into account everything that and with the other players, and really think about what just happened. Think about what's been going on here. Think about the little hints that you got in. There was something, or there's a tentacle already under the dungeon. You see tentacles spouting here. You try to banish one of them. It failed, and the entire place rocked. But there was never any discussion about that. It was just, I failed. I don't want to do anything. Screw it. I'm not doing it again, because it only makes things worse.
Yep.
And like you said, now the players just take a sledgehammer to everything. But it's like, you're not really understanding what's happening here, and it could come back to bite you later, because you're not taking a picture of the whole scope there. And
Yeah.
as a DM, you really want to tell your players, like, you guys should really discuss it. Like, you're missing something from that. You're taking the wrong takeaway. You're taking away the wrong thing from the fact that your banishment failed and the dungeon started shaking. And because you're doing it that way, you're taking the focus on something that is very good information for you guys, and it's just
Yeah.
bypassing.
Well, I mean, that's something that and I've had that in my experience as a player in your game, where it's like I have an idea or an outcome I want to happen, and it doesn't happen the way I want it to. So I get frustrated and annoyed, and I'm ready to put my fist through a wall because I'm not getting the outcome I want. And I've seen this phenomenon in a lot of players where they have in their mind, and I want to say in all of my games, I've had this. I've had at least once with, I don't want to say every player, but with at least one player who they have an outcome in mind and they do a thing and it doesn't yield the result they wanted it to yield. Not that they were expecting, but they wanted it. And that's a key thing that I think a lot of us players need to, even as DMs, we need to take a breather and stop looking at it as this is what I want it to do. In combat, there are things you want to do, but when you're coming across a puzzle or a mystery, you need to look at it more so, this is what I'm going to do. Let me observe what happens. I'm a little bit more of a scientific approach, if that makes sense.
No, it's understandable. I personally felt, for the most part, I try to be like that with some eyes. We're just like, okay, let's try it and see what happens. Oh, okay. Big example was when I wanted to go to Zin's domain and I failed. He's like, you hit a wall. I'm like, are you serious? I try to do whatever I can. He's like, nope, fails. Like, okay, there's a way to do this. Inspect it. I see. Okay. Hey, angelic player character. I need your help with something. This is gonna be good for both of us.
Yep.
Come here.
Yep.
Where I went to another character that could solve my problem. But yeah, generally, I get it. I get it from both sides. Where you have something that you're really expecting it to go and it doesn't. And you're just like, why? Everything was going so perfectly, and then I just hit a wall. But for me, it's the point too of where you whine and give up, that I at times as a DM want to be like, you're taking the wrong thing from this failure,
Yeah.
and it's just, again, I had this issue and it really irks me, and I try not to be combative. It also comes depending on how the player also talks to me as well, when it comes down to us talking personally, as I'm not against embarrassing a person. You know, privately or in front of everybody. Again, it depends on how they themselves go about it. I'm not against doing that if it really comes down to it, especially with my temperament. It's just like, no. You don't get to play that card. So, but so I also get when someone's trying to be a hero and it doesn't go the way that they expect it to go. They get a little frustrated, but to me, it's just like you're not looking at it where it's just like this failed. What did you learn from it to improve on it, or is there a different method to get the result that you're looking for? Um,
Yeah.
and this goes down to one players not being able to cope, or they just don't have the imagination to change how they should do such things. And this goes down to a similar story beforehand with the player guy I felt that wanted to be the hero of the party, and was kind of like wanted to be the big frontline guy. With the same incident where we was trying to save this elven village that was about to be stampeded by a bunch of Terrafowl's monsters and stuff. And we trying to get these elves to the ship for safety. It's like he's trying to be the hero for this one NPC character who belongs to this one player character. But it's just like you're thinking small time. It's just like, bro, we have a like multiple large groups of elves that need to be taken through a jungle to reach our ship. You're worrying about this one person who's helping these two people where it's just like your thing should be the majority. Especially if you're being told by another player that they will get them out of here, but they cannot do the job that you can of protecting 50 bloody people at once. You want to be a hero? You want to be a hero? You want to be the tank? Here's your duty. Here's the job that you were meant to do. Do it. Don't worry about these people. There's somebody in your party telling you they're covered. Go. Be the hero. All right. You're thinking small. You're thinking very small in your imagination. You're not looking at the whole thing. All right. We need to escort like 4 different large groups of elves. Who can do that? You. These people, I can get them out of here at any moment. It looks bad. All right. You won't be able to do that effectively. You can only hold a certain amount of people. And again, I can't protect 50 people all at once. Be the hero. This is your job to be here for these people. And this goes into, again, a lack of imagination on how to perform a task where they have this very big thing. They have this thing in mind and they're refusing to see other ways to achieve that goal.
All right. We have Niraj here, which I've had this up for about 10 minutes. Who doesn't want a bag of holding? If there was one Star Wars game, I'd want one. If there was one in Star Wars game, I would want one. I have to settle for buying enough limb pockets for my character to look like he's drawn by Rob Liefeld. He just said, cognitive dissonance finds us all. Frustration, a pretty natural reaction. To find out what you believed is untrue, and the roadblock stands up to your efforts. Yeah, I would agree with that. I was going to say there was a circumstance in the End Time campaign where Tamias had come up with a creative solution for something, much to my frustration as a dungeon master, with the Luminarch battle, where he had just banished my boss. And I was like, this motherfucker. This motherfucker. And it was annoying. It actually, I don't want to say it pissed me off. It was annoying. And I was like, I'll let him have it. But I'm going to roll to see if I can break out of this shit. Because fuck that. But, that way it gave you a turn. It gave you a turn to do your thing.
That I'm glad to know that scenario annoyed both of us. When Duke just came back, I'm like, "Are you serious? Oh, so that's what we're doing? Really?" And then to find out the whole thing is requiring him to not be banned, I'm like, "Oh, really?" So yeah, and like I said, there's times where I've had that like just frustration, like, what's the point of this? What's the point of me having this spell? But I try not to literally whine or complain out loud. Do I do it to myself? Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes much later on, yes. But in that situation, I've learned to just let it go. But yes, I was hella annoyed when he came back. I'm like, are you? So that's what we're doing? Fine, banish again. It's like, you know what? All right, banish again. Cool. I had rather you tell me he was immune to banish than what you did.
Well, right, and that was the thing I had to reconcile with that. It's like, okay, he's going to just banish the boss. How do I make the fight work with the boss being basically stun locked? And I'm like, I could resign behind it because it's like, okay, they can't damage the boss. All right, that's fine. They can't damage the boss, so they're basically just delaying. And I'm like, okay, if that's all they're gonna do, if they just need more time, I'll give it to them.
But that was the thing. I'm sorry, but that was the thing. We were told it takes time for the thing to charge. So it's like, cool, okay, and we have all these regular soldiers here. If the big guy's gone, we can take care of the small ones, buy us some time. Oh no, that time requires a Luminarch here.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm glad we both annoyed each other in that. I was just like, I'm like, are you serious? Which I mean, you feel like, okay, so I don't play my band.
I didn't want to discourage creativity. Like I love that you did it. In hindsight, I love that you did it.
I was trying to find. I'm like, okay, banishment doesn't really work because he sends a lot of small enemies. So I'm like, I kind of, even though it fits the character personality and be one of the spells, and no, I'm kind of like sitting on this. It is not useful. Oh my god, an encounter where it's actually useful. Bye bye. So yeah, I'm glad. I'm very glad that you were annoyed as much as I was. We annoyed each other. You're like, this bastard just banished it. And I'm like, this bastard just had his bosses break out of banishment. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, and like I said, that was great. I didn't want to punish creativity, but it's also like, the boss is necessary for this. So, something that I'm pretty sure you've answered it, but something I don't quite remember what your answer was. Is how do you deal with a player who's not creative? They're trying to be creative. They're trying to solve an issue, and what's your method? My method is I try to start the creative process in their brain. What do you do?
That's for me. Trying to think of how to actually answer that. That's a little. Generally, I look at D&D a lot cooperatively.
Yeah.
I'm hoping if they can't figure something out, they can ask someone else. Can they figure it out? Or at times where, like, if it's something that none of their characters know how to do, that they at least attempt to play around with said stuff. I am a big fan of letting rule of cool happen if they want to do something really creative. I've seen nonsensical situations, which happened with you when you played John Constantine. You wanted to like have him touch the coin and then shocking grass his hand as you give him the gold coin. It's like, yeah, you knock him out. Things like that.
Yeah. I've asked you, could I have John Constantine punch someone unconscious?
Yeah.
Or stun them with a punch.
You know what I mean? So, but generally, if there's a problem that needs to be handled and they don't have the creativity, they can't think of it. It's like, well, you have teammates there. That has always been my biggest thing. Is even with my boss fights, was like you guys have spells and abilities to counteract various things that these bosses can do or the mechanics of the fight, and you guys need to communicate that with each other, those things and stuff like that. Or like, say a player is blinded. Can anyone remove the blind? You're blind. Like, can you go out? Okay, I can't remove the blind. Or I don't know how to remove this thing blinding me. I'm blinded by something. Can someone do something? So for me, it's always about, if you can't figure out something, maybe someone in your party can. I want everyone to talk and rely on each other, because without relying on each other, you're gonna die. It has always been my stance. The group has to rely on each other, or you will die and fail. For me, I think it's a big thing with my game. So for me, it's not really getting the creative juices starting. It's looking at them, seeing if they're struggling, seeing if they may have failed at something, and being like, looking at them like, well, your teammates are there. Now, if it's something that their character can do and should have a problem doing, and everything, and maybe you got lucky to roll. I don't roll again. It's very dependent, but generally, it's like you have people here. Stop doing it yourself. That's why that's kind of hard for me to really say, and that's how I kind of do things. Which is like it's just pretty much that. Oh, I can't get this door open. It seems to be jammed. What do I do? My lock picking failed. Me trying to ram it failed and just not strong enough. Man, how do I solve this problem? Oh, maybe get the barbarian guy to do it. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, even small things like with the whole water thing in that guy's in the Thursday game we used to play, where it's just like, oh, there's something down there, maybe I can yank it up. It's just somebody needs to tell me. Luckily they say it out loud. It was like they couldn't solve the problem. It was like, oh, hey, barbarian, you're strong. Can you do this? So for me, it's never about the singular focus. It's about if you can't, someone else can. Go get them. Work together on it. Always cooperation. Always my fights, both boss and non-boss fights, how things go within the game for social exploration. It's always been like if you can't solve. Again, it's a little rambly, but this goes into that too. That same very thing, the Stampede thing. It was supposed to be for the fighter guy with the missing potions. He wasn't supposed to go out and do that himself because his mission was to set up the perimeter and help prepare for the Stampede. He needed to ask the others to assist him in recovering these potions, either getting the ones that are missing or getting a whole new stock of them, which, he didn't do. He took it to do it upon himself, which kind of made it a little bit harder on him. And he also ended up not getting his primary job done of getting the perimeter finished before the monsters started attacking, you know. And that's one of my things. Like, okay, you realize you don't know how to solve this problem at the start. Ask someone else. Do that.
Yeah, I'm noticing a certain theme and duality to your to the method of your madness here. As a DM, you take the perspective, you as players figure it out. And then as a player, you take the perspective, fuck all y'all, I'm going to do this myself.
Well, this goes. Okay. So
I know it's
you're
crude.
not wrong.
I know it's crude, but that's the pattern I'm noticing.
All right, this goes into depending on who I'm playing with. With this is not to be rude to the people I've played with in your games, by none. Because I actually feel like I do rely on Pseudo a lot. He was very helpful. We had that dynamics he's there where I didn't feel alone. In getting stuff done. I had someone I can have help me get stuff done, but then again, he was also more of a servant robot, how he made the character. But it comes down to where I don't find my group reliable after like testing with the waters with them. Then yeah, it was like, okay, you guys are not reliable. I'm gonna do it myself, and then when I need you for something particular, I'll come and get you for then. So you're not really wrong, but it very depends on who I'm playing with. In Edalian's game, not the Starfinder one, but that one too. But the previous one that I had left the in time for to play with him in real life, called Persona. I had somebody, I had two people technically. I had both have named Ursula and another one named Kenshi, where they were very reliable, both in and out of combat and stuff like that. We're trying to figure out what's going on in the campaign and working together and stuff. Was where I don't feel like I had to go out my way to do everything myself, and it was great. And I'm having some situation with the Starfinder campaign where we're all very much aligned together, and I'm not stuck being like, okay, you guys are not reliable. I have to go do this myself, and then I'll call you if I need you. No, it's just like we are doing this together, and everyone seems reliable. I don't feel like this heavy burden to be like, okay, I guess I have to do this myself. And then this goes into a whole other thing of which I've talked even down before. A lot of time your players are very reactive, which me you talked about, which you know this that I'm much more proactive. I'm not trying to wait for something to happen and then deal with it. I'm trying to get ahead of the game here and trying to be like, well, we need to deal with the overarching problem. instead of just following the problem and dealing with it after the problem has already started more problems. I want to find a way to deal with the core problem so that we don't have to deal with it, being one step behind and just constantly causing problems and then fixing it. So there's also that kind of respect there, where if a lot of the players are being reactive, it's kind of like, so does anyone have a thing, a solution, anything going forward? Generally tend to know they didn't at a lot of times, or they would get lost in, as you used to say, lost in the muck and mire in the woods and everything, the argons and stuff. Big example was the
Yes,
fires
the
that you
Argonne.
set. The fire that you set in those woods with the honey. Well, we set. That's why I said you said that we had set to get rid of the problem that you put of the honey cocoons. And I was like, this play character has a spell that drops water, and I have a spell that with my my familiar can spray, water slash ice. But then we also ran into another issue where someone called for help, and the thing was, you two go deal with that call for help. You stay here and deal with this fire so it doesn't spread and get worse. And when the two didn't come back person help, that person that was dealing with the fire is just like, I want to go check on the other two, but the fire is still here and raging. So don't. And then started asking again, and it's where both my character personality is like, I already gave you the answer. If you're gonna ask me, then just do whatever you want. It's like, I don't, nothing's gonna change. There's still a fire here, where that person chose to go and help the other two that didn't need help to help that person. You know what I'm saying? Like, but we still have this fire here, which ticked him off, which also kind of ticked me off because I'm like, that was heavily irresponsible. It's like, you're the main person that can put this fire out. Luckily, it didn't rage harder and destroy an entire forest and probably villages and everything that lived here. Luckily, but you don't know that. And that was one of the things was like, okay, I can't rely on you. I already told you before, leave it to them. And my whole thing is like, if you trust them, then you can trust they'll get the job done. You shouldn't need to help them. To me, that shows you didn't trust them to get the job done. Where I'm trusting them to get the job that I gave to them done and you to get the job that you supposed to get done. But you did not do that. You broke myself. And that's something that kept happening with a lot of them, where it's just like, I gave you a job. Hello? You're breaking my trust, which is like, I might as well just do it all myself. Because if I leave it to you, it's not getting done. And this goes back to the other player where it's just like, you guys recruit me for the ship that you wanted to have for the security details, so you can be head of security. Where are they? You didn't do it. That's like, at that point, I just did it myself. Why bother going to you? And this goes against my own core, like you said, where you see that difference, which is like, players should be cooperating and working together. But if I'm doing that and then the players decide to not, which is their choice, then it's like, I'm just gonna just become solo guy at that point. It's like, y'all do that, I'm gonna go do this. So you're not wrong. There is that very duality of difference, and it's just like, it's really weird. But for me, it's because the party that I had when I was doing that always gave me unreliableness, and it begins to slowly irk the nerves, which is like, I might just do everything myself. You know what I'm saying? What's the point of this if you're not going to be helpful? And I'm, and we work together on this.
Well, I would say you have been in 3 of my games.
Yeah.
3? Yeah. And we have been players, party mates in 1, 2, 3 games as well. So what I'm curious about is, based on your experiences in my games, okay, the 3 games that you've played in mine, and then the 1 game you and I did on the Thursdays, okay, that game. Oh, actually, no, take that game and also combine it with the Lady Potatoes game. Okay. What do you see as like a contributing factor to you splitting away from the party?
Like I said, unreliableness. If we're working together and we agree on the objective and the goal and how we're gonna go about it, and you kind of don't do your part in the group, and it keeps happening, it becomes a big like, okay, this is not working, and everyone else seems to be fine with it. I'm not trying to spoil the other's fun, everyone's fun. If it comes down to it, I'll do it myself. Now, with the one with us being players together, especially, the one with Lady Potato was much more. When the play, a real life issue happened while kind of also being in game because it started in game to out. It was just like, I don't want to. If everyone wants to surround him to go to a similar thing, I don't want to be. I'm just gonna go off and do my own thing, because if I'm with this person, we're just gonna fight both in and out of character, because it's gonna be something that's gonna start in character and then it's gonna definitely go out of character. So it's just like, it's better at that point for me to I personally take on myself to separate myself from that issue. So that was that one. Now the other 30 game we played together, I worked with them. They didn't communicate well with us, but it was just like on things that we did. I was like, okay, this is what they want from me. They want me to tank. They want me to distraction. They want me to keep thing in play, thing like that. Got you. I'm not going to take a hard solo action. I'm going to do thing helpful. Now, they weren't reliable a lot because the game was just like communication. I mean, you play that many games with them.
Yeah.
It was an overall thing with that. That's why I kind of want to use that one example. I'd rather play the one with Lady Potato on why I took a solo pro. Like, if you decide to not be with them and came with me, you would have been fine. Like I said, my whole thing was just everyone was with him, and I know why you went with them because that's where the party is. You kind of on the same philosophy of we shouldn't really be splitting like that. We shouldn't. You didn't have a personal real issue with the person, so but you want to move forward. They were moving backwards. That is your little argument there with them, which is something I also kind of hate when you're going back for no real reason going back. I don't mind backtracking, but it has to be backtracking after a certain period of time to see how things change. But if you would have sent with me, then me and you would have went forward together. You went with them, like, I don't want to be with that guy. That whole thing with me and him was my like, no. I know the minute it's gonna be an issue. When they and then worse on, they backtrack. So I'm like, I'm gonna go and move ahead forward and start making my own plans, do my own little thing. Which
so something I'm noting is with the Thursday game that we did. You took the tank role to be like almost literally a tank, where it's like you're just waiting for the general to point you in the direction to roll down the street and start blasting. Okay. That was just something I was analyzing, thinking about. It's like, well, in that game, you were very cooperative, I guess. As tank, you were just, okay, they need me to do the thing, I'll do the thing. Whereas contrast that to the other side of it, Lady Potato's game, that one you could have taken the route of, I'm going to just compliment the rest of the party, and then you just were like, no, to hell with them all, I'm going to do my thing. So I look at that and I was like, okay, that's an interesting contrast. And I look at it with my games where, one, you tried starting off with the party. The party basically ignored you, didn't care about you unless they needed your help specifically for a task. Then you create another character, and that guy was more like, okay, I'm going to lead, and I'm going to take the reins of the party since everyone here is a bunch of chumps. And you took on a more responsible role with that, but maintained your independence. And then the third game, you took on a character who was going to assume the role of leadership. He had his own agenda, his own greed was basically his motivation. He died. You made your next character who was like, okay, I'll lead, but I have this more noble and heroic agenda or goal. And he got to a point of just being like, fuck these people. Mainly one particular character. But, effectively he was like, one character is spiraling into making several characters stupid.
Lord, sweet Jesus, you ain't wrong.
So yeah, it's a behavior pattern that that I might be exclusively privy to, and so that's what I was curious about, and that's why I wanted to analyze, because it's like, from a DM's perspective, I'm looking in all scenarios as a DM. I'm saying, okay, this player is being a problem because they're not cooperating with the rest of the team, and they need each other to survive. And here's a player who's going off doing his own thing. And I'm analyzing it and thinking, okay, how can you prevent this? How can you combat this issue where you have players that are conflicting with each other and they're going to need each other? That's going to be a question that we're going to be asking ourselves to the end of time.
Yeah.
I want to get to this real quick. Niraj says, first time I ran as a character in my GM's Shadowrun game, I was able to blow his plot up. He had an elaborate meetup where someone I was bodyguarding was going to be assassinated. There's the intrigue right there. But he didn't count on me knowing well enough about my mage to use astral projection to scout. It took him 5 minutes to recover from me telling him I was astral projecting to go scout the meeting. Yeah, that's some. Maybe we talk about that at some point of dungeon masters and thwarting them, and some of the troubles that we experience as dungeon masters. I don't take it personally when someone thwarts my plans. As we were just talking about earlier with the banishment of a Benefactor here, taking his character and banishing my boss. I found it frustrating and I found it annoying, but I also know from the dungeon master side, okay, the necessariness of the mechanics or of how things are supposed to go. So, understanding that necessity is what the DM is privy to that the players aren't. And that's also a part of the fun submarine game that we play with each other as we're running encounters and trying to solve mysteries. But
that moment when you eat the dungeon master's balls and they're just quiet. It's like, great moment. I definitely enjoyed that.
Yeah, and then there's also the times when 2 decimators come out and one-shot the entire party. especially the newbie flyer guy. I forget what they're Ericoa Warlock gets one-shotted. Just plat, dead.
Oh god. These creatures came out, they all just start blowing, exploding area, like, oh yeah. Oh, you're the Erico guy is dead. Why am I not surprised? I still hate that fight so much.
Is there anything you want to continue talking about regarding heroes?
No, not really. Like I said, my own thing is, I'm not a big hero guy. Like I said again, just to summarize, I'm much more of the players are adventurers. If someone wants to be a hero, I will not stop that. It's something that's their character's overarching goal. Again, I'm all about facilitating that.
Okay.
But I never ever initially plan or be like, you all are heroes. I try not to make a game like that. It's
Okay.
you guys are doing X and you're with people that also are doing X's. And maybe there's something here that you guys may have something that drives you to go in here. And if you want to consider yourself a hero for doing that, like say if they stop the cult, they themselves make themselves heroes. They may be like, yeah, we did the heroic thing. Even though they had their own personal reason to do it. But my goal was never you guys to end up being like the heroes that save the world. It's no, we stopped this because, well, screw these guys.
Okay. Well, I have nothing further. I think we can wrap this up. I want to thank you guys in chat for sticking it out. Niraj, saw Plasma Gigas and Adam. Thank you guys for listening and accompanying us. And you guys have a good one.
Bye.